Hello, my name is Annette DeLu, and you are listening to The Heart of You. If you feel so inclined, please feel free to rate this podcast anywhere you are listening to this podcast. It really helps the channel. Thanks so much. Transcending duality. Now, what does it mean to transcend duality? Well, first, let me explain what I mean by duality. On this planet, we are constantly dealing with two sides of the same coin. We are dealing with the light side, the dark side, or if you will, I will make another Star Wars reference, the Jedi and the Sith, what we deem as good and evil, the shadow and the light. We are talking about the extremes on either side of any particular situation. All you have to do is literally open up any news media outlet and you can see the duality that's going on this planet at this moment. If you don't agree with something somebody says, you automatically are taking a stance on one side or the other, and you view the other person or the other situation as other than yourself. So, in other words, you are saying that just because I have this particular belief system and your belief system is way different than mine, or what you would view as the opposite of mine, then that means that you and I are not aligned in any way. And when you transcend duality, what that means is that you are operating from balanced energy. You are reaching this point of compassion with understanding where the other person might be coming from, even if you don't agree with where they are energetically, where they are in terms of their stance on a particular subject matter, where you can actually find that compassion for someone who thinks differently than you do. Another way of looking at it would be to look at it as non-judgment. Because when you are judging another person for their opinions or for where they are at on their particular journey, you are essentially placing a false belief system upon a particular situation. The reason why it is a false belief system is because you have no idea what is going on in the other person's experience. You don't know what's happened in their past lives. You don't know what kind of lessons that person is trying to learn. And so you are looking at it from a very narrow viewpoint of what that other person's experience is. And we are basically only responsible for our own journeys and for our own experiences. And the only way that we can get to a place of peace within ourselves, of peace within our communities, within society, is to be able to have compassion for another person within a particular situation that might be polarizing, that might be in that dualistic energy. And let me tell you why this is important. If you are in a situation with somebody and their viewpoint is different than yours, and let's say you view that particular viewpoint as evil. So let's take racism, let's take any sort of atrocity that happens on this planet. And most people would be able to say, okay, yes, those are really awful things, and I don't agree with it. The problem comes when you face that situation with the same energy, which is hatred, which is combativeness. And what does that do to your energy? That essentially puts you in the same energy that that other person is in. In order to be able to transcend these types of situations, your energy cannot be in those lower type energies, that combative energy, that hatred energy. Your energy needs to transcend all of those emotions in order to bring about a peaceful solution. One person, that's all it takes. One person in the situation needs to rise above and say, you know what? Okay, so I don't agree with what this person is saying, and I feel that their standpoint or their views are completely wrong. So instead of facing that situation and saying, I'm going to bang my head against the wall and try to convince this person that they are wrong, instead of doing that, reaching your point of energetic balance, understanding where the other person is in regards to that particular subject, and then act accordingly. Sometimes that might mean walking away. Sometimes that might mean not interacting with that person in any way. Sometimes that might look like having a conversation, and maybe the other person might be open to what you have to say. But if they shut you down and tell you that they don't want to hear it, then that's your signal. That's your signal to turn around, walk away, change your energy, and then focus on something that you want to do in order to change the situation. So basically, we are facing the energy we want to be in. So if we want to be in an energy of a planet that is filled with love, compassion, acceptance, and equality for every single person, then it is in your best interest to get out of that dualistic energy and basically go into an energy in which you are going to do something positive about it. Because diving into that energy of being in that fight or flight mode is not going to help the situation. In order to transcend duality, that is the key: compassion. Compassion for yourself and compassion for others. In order to be compassionate for yourself, you have to give yourself a break and understand that you are human. We are all flawed. We all have these lessons that we're here to learn. We all have these mistakes that we've made in the past. We all have all aspects of a human life. And there is nothing that needs to be forgiven about that within yourself. Now, when it comes to another person, we do have a tendency to maybe even hold other people to a particularly high standard that is almost unachievable. And that high standard gets higher and higher, it seems, the less you know a person. If you just know somebody casually and you know maybe a few things about them, and then you hear that they did something or they like something that you deem unacceptable, then all of a sudden you're painting that person with one brush stroke of, oh, well, that person did that, and so therefore I will never speak to that person, or I don't want that person in my life. And it's very much this idea of speaking in very extreme terms, black and white terms, meaning that there is no gray area. I can guarantee you that that person you are judging, that person that you are dismissing simply because of a story or because of a singular behavior, I can guarantee you there is more to that person than you realize. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to interact with this person if your values and beliefs do not align. But what it means is that if you hold anger or resentment or any sort of lower energy for another person, whether or not it's because they don't hold the beliefs that you do or because of a particular situation in which you saw them do something and you did not approve, ultimately that emotion is being housed within you and is only hurting you. And I'm sure you have all heard that expression, holding on to anger only hurts you. It doesn't hurt the other person. And that is absolutely true in all respects to being able to transcend duality. So if you take a situation, let's take a really benign situation where, let's say you have a friend who is constantly late, always late, no matter what you do. And I'm sure we all have a friend that's like that. Every single time that friend is late, you get very angry, you get really annoyed, it ruins the night, you're not able to have a really good time together because you're holding on to that resentment because that person was late. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can go about this particular situation. Before you actually make plans with this friend, you say, okay, out of 12 times we've gotten together, 11 of those times this person has been late. So how can I adjust what my expectations are and what I'm going to be doing in order for myself to feel at ease and not feel angry about the situation? Maybe you decide that when you're hanging out with this friend that you don't have to be on time, that maybe you show up 10 or 15 minutes late as well. And who knows, maybe you'll arrive at the same time. The other option is to potentially go and invite other friends. And then when that other friend arrives late, that's fine. They can just join in and it's not putting you out in terms of waiting on that person. Now, the thing is that you don't know why that person was late. That person could have 18,000 things going on in their life that they're not telling you about. And the reason why they're late is simply because they are trying to manage the best that they can. It is not a personal attack on you, but that may be how you take it because you're feeling like your time is not important enough for this other person. You can look at it in so many different ways and you can have so many different emotions about a very simple thing. If you think about it, one person being 15 minutes late for an event or several events even is something that is not worth getting really worked up over. And I have seen people actually lose friendships because of something that simple. A really good way of not getting into that energy of anger and resentment to the point where it could potentially ruin a relationship would be to have compassion for that person, understand why they have had that behavior, and even talk about it if you need to. There are times when there could be simply a misunderstanding that is going on, especially if it's something that you are internalizing as a personal attack or a personal affront to yourself and your person, that if you approach the situation with communication and compassion, you might be able to diffuse the situation and then come to a middle ground, in which case then both you and the other person are feeling at ease. Because if you look at the other side of the situation, think about what your friend is going through. Are they completely stressed out because they know that they're going to be late and they know they're going to be disappointing you? And so that energy is actually making them more anxious. It happens on both sides when you have this energy of expectation, the lack of compassion, and the lack of communication. Another really great way of transcending duality would be to not be so steadfast in your belief systems. Belief systems are a really, really big part of every single person's life. Knowing where those belief systems come from is really, really important. So if you think about something that you know to be true, that you just know in your heart that you absolutely believe this to be true, think about where that belief came from. Did you create that belief system yourself? Or did you get that belief system from somebody else? And finding out where it came from is incredibly important because that's how beliefs get handed down over the course of generations. Think about something that your parents used to say to you all the time. Is that a belief system that you have now taken on yourself? And if that's the case, take a look at that belief system, question it. Ask yourself, is this something that is true? Is this something that is true for me? Is it true for the entire world? You can ask yourself all of these really beautiful questions about each and every belief system you have. And trust me, we all have a lot of them. And a lot of them are actually limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are belief systems that no longer serve you. They are, in fact, hindering the flow and the natural trajectory of your life path. An example of a limiting belief would be, I grew up poor, and so because I came from a poor family, there's no possible way that I could come into abundance in wealth. You may hear that statement and think to yourself, well, I don't say that to myself, even though that may be true. But that is the statement that is permeating through all of your decisions. It's permeating through most of your thoughts. And if you don't address it, it is going to affect how you make decisions. If you don't have confidence that you have the absolute ability to create abundance within your own life, despite your upbringing being in a lack of abundance, then those decisions that you make are going to be clouded by the fact that this limiting belief is telling you that either you are not worthy or that your family line dictates that, oh, well, we've never had money in our family, so I guess that's just the way that it is. Those are the types of things that really need to be cleared in order for you to stay on your life path and to be able to transcend that duality. I don't often give homework in a podcast, but I'm going to give homework today because I think that it's really important for everyone to write down all of those belief systems that you can think of. And you don't have to sit down in one sitting and do that, but I would say keep the notebook out on your coffee table or near where you drink your coffee in the morning. As you're doing your meditations, as you are going throughout your day, if there's a thought that comes through your head, acknowledge it and say, oh, yeah, I know you. I've seen this thought before, and I know that this is familiar to me. And write down the thought and ask yourself where that thought comes from. Where does that belief come from? And why? And then ask yourself if it's true. And if it's not, let it go. A third way that you can transcend that duality is to make room for new information. We make decisions based on the information we have. That's the best that we can do in that moment because we are operating from the information, from the emotions, from the experiences, from everything that we have accumulated up until this now moment. But let's say you get a bit of information that changes a lot of things. Let's say you get a bit of information from a friend that changes your perspective of them. Or if you get a bit of information from a parent and now you understand exactly why they have been the way that they have been for decades. Information can be your biggest ally and your biggest tool for transcending duality. Because if you are open to new information coming to you, if you are open to new things, new experiences, all of the things that will actually create a new reality for you, it will actually change and shift those belief systems that you've had for quite some time. You have to be willing to change and shift those belief systems as you get more information. Now, some of the information you get, you may say, you know what I'm doing now, I think is very much working for me and I'm okay with that. Okay, so that's fine. You don't have to take on every single thing that you come across when it comes to information. And I encourage you, please don't, because you have to look at things from a point of discernment. So really feel into your heart space to say, okay, well, is this new information true for me? Does it spark some interest in maybe doing more research or going within and doing a meditation to really see where that piece of information lands for me? And if it lands in a place that resonates for you, then yes, you can take that on and add that to your tool belt of more information that is going to help you walk through this world and walk through this life in a more harmonious fashion. If the bit of information doesn't resonate for you, then you can always let it go. But ultimately, the biggest thing is to remain open. Remain open to hearing other points of view, to seeing other sides of a situation. The fourth way would be breaking tradition. Now, as humans, we are really rooted into having traditions. And I'm all for cultural traditions and traditions within families. I think they can be really, really beautiful. But there are also some traditions and things that have happened over the course of history that are not serving the collective as a whole. Just because something has always been done doesn't mean that it needs to continue. This is almost a continuation on point number 3 because it really does take a look at the things that are stuck within you as far as belief systems, as far as thoughts, as far as what has been handed down from generation to generation. And when you take a look at those things that are stuck, the things that are not moving forward, it can really show you exactly where we need to look in society. And you can see it all around you. And when people start looking at what is happening in the current climate in the world, there are multitudes of things happening and things shifting. But in order for those things to shift, the things that have always been done have to be brought to the surface and they have to be cleared. We did talk about this in the shadow work episode as well. Take a look at some of the habits you have. You may say to yourself, well, I have coffee every morning simply because it's something that I've always done. Well, could you do something else? Could you just have tea instead? And why would you want to have tea? And these are the questions that you need to ask yourself. Are you perfectly fine with having coffee every single morning? Or do you want to change? Do you feel like maybe having tea is going to bring me more joy? It's a very simple example, but it shows you how you can look at something that you've been doing out of habit and re-look at it from a different perspective, or even look at it for the first time ever. Because a lot of times those behaviors that we have that are habit, we don't even think about. They're just automatic things that we do. Therefore, we end up not even consciously living those parts of our lives. So take a look at those things within yourself and say, okay, so if our family has always done our Thanksgiving tradition in this way, having these exact foods and all of these things, and it's always hard to get the family together and everybody's traveling and then there's always delays and it takes everybody forever to drive in and all of those things, all of the things that surround a family holiday. And then let's say you decide, you know what? We don't have to get together on Thanksgiving if it's completely inconvenient for most of the family. We can decide that, hey, maybe we'll celebrate a couple weeks later, or maybe we'll find another time during the summer where we can all get together and go somewhere and have a fantastic time where it's not going to be stressful for the entire family. You can make your own rules about how you want to live your life. Just because society and the collective do things a particular way doesn't mean that it's right for you. And that is the fifth way to transcend duality, is to make your own way that is aligned for you while holding compassion for others. When we pave our own way without having compassion for others, we have a tendency to have blinders on. We don't see other people's lives, their trials and struggles that they go through. We don't have our heart open to other experiences and our ears open to other opinions. And when we close ourselves off that way, it does create more duality in the world. In order to be able to keep all of those senses open, to keep yourself open in a beautifully loving and compassionate way, you have to find that balance within yourself. And that is why all of this work, this spiritual work, is so, so important, because it's not only to help you live your wonderfully best life, but it is also to help the collective achieve their best lives as well. As a collective, when you have everyone living in the flow of their life, living in that beautiful divine energy, you have a collective that is going to move forward in compassion, in peace, and in love. Now, this may seem like a total pipe dream, especially looking at the world the way that it is now, that possibly hundreds of years from now, maybe even 1,000 years from now, that the world as a whole could move forward in a compassionate, peaceful, and unconditionally loving space. It is absolutely possible. And it is possible to do so while living in a dualistic society as we do. It is about each individual person taking responsibility for their own actions, for their own beliefs, and for their own thoughts. And really understanding what it is within their heart that is preventing them from being aligned with their true self, with that compassion and love. It is absolutely achievable, and every little bit that we do is going to inch ourselves as a collective much closer to transcending duality. Ask yourself today, what can I do right now in this moment to offer up compassion to somebody who might need it? If I am having a disagreement with somebody, how can I offer up compassion to that person for what they may be going through, in addition to what we are going through together in this particular situation? Having that compassion is the best way to be able to diffuse a situation, to be able to get back into a place where communication can be heard and received. And to me, I feel like that is the best way to start as an individual, when sometimes the duality in the world feels just so big and so heavy, that if you just focus on that one little part of your world where you might be able to change and shift the energy of something that you are dealing with, that can make all the difference in the world. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Have an amazing day and never stop exploring your soul, because it is the most important relationship you will ever have. If you are interested in learning more about me and the sessions that I do, feel free to go to my website at infinitesoullove.com. On all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Infinite Soul Love 1111. Hey, and if you feel called, I would love it if you could rate The Heart of You on whatever streaming service you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please take a moment, give it a review. It really does help the channel. Thanks so much.